Grace Okoro's hands trembled as she approached table 7. The wealthy businessman in the perfectly tailored shirt had barely touched his expensive seafood platter, food that cost more than she'd seen in weeks. At 7 months pregnant, exhausted from cleaning Nigeria's most exclusive restaurant, the Golden Spoon restaurant, Grace knew she was about to cross a line that could cost her the only job she could find. "Sir, please. I'm sorry to bother you," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the clatter of dishes. "The food you didn't finish. Could I?" The well-dressed customer looked up from his untouched meal, his dark eyes meeting hers with surprising gentleness. Grace had no idea she was speaking to Marcus Johnson, the mysterious billionaire owner of the entire restaurant empire. To her, he was just another wealthy patron, but something about his kind eyes gave her courage to break every rule. What happened next would transform both their lives forever. If you want to see how one moment of courage changed everything, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because this story will restore your faith in humanity. Comment right now telling us where you're watching from and what your local time is right now. Just 2 years earlier, Grace had been living a completely different life. As a marketing graduate from the University of Nigeria, she worked at a prestigious firm in Enugu's bustling business district. Her apartment in Independence layout was modest but comfortable, her future bright with possibilities. Everything changed when she met David Okafor at a corporate event. Tall, charismatic, and seemingly successful, he swept Grace off her feet with promises of marriage and a beautiful future together. For 6 months, Grace believed she'd found her soulmate. The pregnancy test showing 2 pink lines should have been the beginning of their joy together. Instead, it became the moment her world crumbled. "You need to get rid of it," David said coldly when she shared the news. "I already have a family in Lagos, a wife and 2 children. This was never supposed to be serious." When Grace refused to terminate her pregnancy, David's mask finally fell away. Using his connections in Nigeria's business network, he had her fired from her job and blacklisted from other companies. Within weeks, Grace went from promising professional to unemployed pariah. Her savings evaporated quickly. Rent, food, medical bills, everything became impossible. Too ashamed to return to her village where her aunties had warned her about Lagos men, Grace found herself sleeping in an abandoned car at Emeka's mechanic shop, the owner taking pity on her condition. By her 7th month, desperation forced Grace to accept the only work she could find, cleaning at the Golden Spoon restaurant. The irony wasn't lost on her. She now scrubbed floors in the same upscale Independence layout where she once dined with David. The Golden Spoon restaurant catered to Nigeria's elite, oil executives, politicians, business moguls who thought nothing of spending 300,000 Nigerian nairas on a single meal. Grace earned 30,000 Nigerian nairas monthly, barely enough for basic necessities. The staff whispered constantly about their mysterious owner, Marcus Johnson. At only 30, he'd inherited a food empire but chose to live simply. Unlike other wealthy young men who flaunted their success, Marcus was quiet, observant, almost mysterious. "He sits at table 7 every Friday," whispered Amaka, another cleaner. "Never brings anyone, never makes trouble. But those eyes, it's like he sees everything." Grace had noticed him during her shifts. While other wealthy patrons demanded attention and made scenes, this quiet customer was different. He nodded politely to staff, never complained, and seemed kind, though she had no idea who he really was or that he owned everything around her. On this particular Friday, the Golden Spoon buzzed with excitement. A major oil deal had been signed, and executives were celebrating with champagne and the restaurant's most expensive dishes. Grace moved between tables, invisible in her oversized uniform, fighting waves of dizziness from hunger. She hadn't eaten since morning, a single slice of bread Emeka's wife had given her. Her baby kicked restlessly, as if sensing her mother's distress. Marcus sat at his usual spot, a plate of grilled prawns and jollof rice mostly untouched before him. Grace had watched him push the food around his plate, lost in thought. The sight of that wasted meal, enough to feed her for days, made her stomach clench with desperate hunger. As Marcus stood to leave, something inside Grace snapped. Maybe it was the baby's persistent kicking, maybe it was the dizzy spell that nearly made her stumble, or maybe it was just the crushing weight of her circumstances. She knew asking any customer for food could get her fired, but desperation made her bold. "Sir, please," she called softly, her voice trembling. Marcus turned, his eyes immediately taking in her condition, the pregnant belly, the tired eyes, the way she swayed slightly on her feet. "I'm sorry to bother you, but would it be possible, the food you didn't finish, could I?" She couldn't complete the sentence, shame burning her cheeks. Instead of the rejection or disgust Grace expected, Marcus did something unexpected. He sat back down. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Grace, sir. Grace Okoro." "Grace." He said it like he was testing how it sounded. "When did you last eat a proper meal?" The kindness in his voice broke something inside her. Tears she'd been holding back for months spilled over. What started as a plea for leftovers became an hour-long conversation that would change everything. Marcus listened as Grace shared her story. The betrayal, the blacklisting, the desperate circumstances that brought her here. "You studied marketing at UNN?" he asked, genuine interest in his voice. "Yes, sir. I graduated with second-class upper. I had dreams once." Marcus studied her face, noting the intelligence in her eyes despite her exhaustion. When Grace mentioned David Okafor's name, his expression hardened in a way that surprised her. "David Okafor," he repeated slowly. "Oil contractor, drives a white Lexus SUV." Grace nodded, surprised. "You know him, sir?" Marcus' jaw tightened. "I know his type. Men like him, they don't deserve to walk free." Grace wondered why Marcus seemed so affected by David's name, but she was too grateful for his kindness to ask questions. That night, Marcus didn't just give Grace the leftover food. He pressed some extra money into her hand. "For the baby," he said quietly. "Every child deserves a chance." Over the following weeks, mysterious blessings began appearing in Grace's life. The restaurant management announced a new staff housing program, and Grace qualified for a small apartment. Prenatal medical care was suddenly covered by a company health initiative she'd never heard of. The kitchen began having surplus meals that Grace was allowed to take home for quality control testing. Grace had no idea that the kind customer Marcus from Table 7 was orchestrating everything behind the scenes. To her, these were just incredible strokes of luck, the restaurant management being unusually generous. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself looking forward to their brief conversations during her cleaning shifts. He would arrive at Table 7 each Friday, hoping to see her, to check on her well-being without revealing his identity. "The oil executives prefer Table 12, she mentioned casually one evening while cleaning nearby. "It has the best view but feels private. They conduct more business there." Marcus made a mental note, impressed by her insights. Grace was observant, intelligent, her marketing background showing even in casual conversation. The other staff, particularly Sandra, the head waitress, grew increasingly curious about Grace's good fortune. "Why does the pregnant girl suddenly get so many benefits?" Sandra complained to other employees. "Someone upstairs must be protecting her, but who?" Sandra became obsessed with discovering Grace's mysterious benefactor. She began following Grace, watching her interactions with customers, trying to identify who might be helping her. "I'm going to find out who's behind this," Sandra declared to her allies. "Mark my words, there's something fishy going on." Sandra began sabotaging Grace's work, hoping to force her mysterious protector to reveal himself. She tampered with cleaning supplies, spread rumors, and tried to make Grace's life difficult. But Grace, focused on providing for her unborn child, endured the harassment with quiet dignity. She worked twice as hard to overcome the sabotage, never complaining or fighting back. At 8 months pregnant, Grace went into premature labor during her Friday shift. She was cleaning near table 7 when sudden, intense contractions doubled her over in pain. Marcus was at his usual table when he heard Grace's cry of distress. Without hesitation, he rushed to her side, his concern overriding any thought of propriety. "Call an ambulance," he commanded the staff with an authority that made everyone freeze in shock. Grace had never heard him speak so forcefully, like someone used to being obeyed. "It's too early," Grace gasped. "The baby, it's too early." "Don't worry," Marcus said firmly, supporting her with surprising strength. "I'm getting you to the hospital. Everything will be fine." When the ambulance seemed delayed, Marcus made a decision that stunned everyone watching. He swept Grace into his arms and carried her toward the exit with decisive authority. "My car is faster," he announced. "I'm taking her now." At the hospital, what happened next shocked Grace completely. Marcus took charge with an authority that revealed his true status. He authorized all treatments without question, guaranteed payment for everything, and spoke to doctors like someone accustomed to making life-changing decisions. "Sir, are you the father?" a nurse asked. "No," he replied quietly, "but I'm taking full responsibility for her care." Grace, between contractions, began to realize this was no ordinary restaurant customer. The way staff deferred to him, the ease with which he handled medical expenses, nothing about this made sense unless Grace gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl despite the premature arrival. The doctors assured them that while the baby needed monitoring, she was strong and would be fine. As Grace held her daughter for the first time, tears of relief and joy streaming down her face, Marcus, who had stayed by her side through everything, watched with emotions he'd never experienced before. "She's perfect," Grace whispered, then looked up at him with eyes full of gratitude and confusion. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you. The medical bills alone. I don't even know your name." "My name is Marcus," he said softly. "Marcus Johnson." Grace's eyes widened. Every staff member at the Golden Spoon restaurant knew that name, the mysterious owner they whispered about but never saw. You're the owner?" Grace's voice was barely a whisper. Marcus nodded. "Grace, there's so much I need to tell you. About David Okafor, about why I helped you, about how I feel." It was during Grace's recovery that Marcus revealed everything. He owned not just the Golden Spoon, but a chain of restaurants across Nigeria. He'd been the one orchestrating all the help, the apartment, the medical care, the food. More importantly, he'd fallen in love, not with the idea of rescuing someone, but with Grace's strength, intelligence, and character. "I've been investigating David's activities since our first conversation," Marcus explained. "I have enough evidence to have him prosecuted for fraud. He tried to cheat my company years ago. I know exactly who he is." Grace was overwhelmed. The customer she'd asked for leftovers was not just wealthy. He was one of Nigeria's youngest billionaires. Yet he'd shown her more kindness and respect than anyone in her privileged past ever had. When Grace returned to work with baby Chioma, she faced a hostile environment. Now that Marcus's identity and his feelings for Grace were known, the jealousy among staff reached a breaking point. Sandra led the charge, demanding that Marcus fire Grace for manipulating him and disrupting the workplace harmony. Marcus called a staff meeting that would be remembered for years to come. "I want to address the situation directly," Marcus began, his voice carrying quiet authority. "Grace Okoro will be promoted to restaurant manager, effective immediately. Her business education and proven character make her the right choice for this position." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. "Furthermore," Marcus continued, "I want you all to understand Grace's story. She was victimized by a criminal, David Okafor, who used his connections to destroy her career after she refused his demands. I have evidence of his fraudulent activities, which will be turned over to the authorities. Marcus's gaze settled on Sandra and her allies. Anyone who cannot work respectfully with Grace is welcome to find employment elsewhere. This restaurant operates on principles of dignity and mutual respect. Sandra and 2 other staff members were terminated that day for their harassment of Grace. Under Grace's management, the Golden Spoon transformed. Her marketing background and natural empathy created a warmer atmosphere without compromising the restaurant's exclusivity. Customer satisfaction improved, and staff morale soared under her fair leadership. Marcus and Grace's relationship deepened naturally. There was no rush, no pressure, just 2 people discovering that love could grow from the most unexpected circumstances. Meanwhile, the legal case against David proceeded. With Marcus's evidence and testimony from other victims, David was prosecuted for fraud and ordered to pay substantial damages to those he'd wronged. "Justice has a way of finding people," Marcus observed as they learned of David's conviction. Grace finally contacted her family in the village, introducing them to both Chioma and Marcus. The aunties who'd warned her about Lagos men were amazed to meet a man who truly honored their niece. 1 year after Grace had asked for leftovers at table 7, Marcus proposed to her at that same table. The loyal staff members who'd supported Grace throughout her journey witnessed the moment, tears of joy flowing freely. The ring was beautiful but modest. Marcus had learned that Grace valued sentiment over extravagance. "You asked me for food that night," Marcus said, kneeling beside her chair. "But you gave me something far more valuable. You showed me what real strength looks like. Will you marry me?" Grace's "yes" was heard throughout the restaurant, followed by applause from everyone present. The wedding took place 6 months later in Enugu, with Grace's village family prominently featured alongside Marcus's business associates. It was a celebration that bridged social classes and proved that true love recognizes no barriers. Marcus officially adopted Chioma, giving her his name and his heart. The little girl who'd been born from desperation would grow up surrounded by love and opportunity. 5 years later, Marcus and Grace have expanded their restaurant empire across Nigeria. More importantly, they've established the Grace Foundation, which helps pregnant women and single mothers get back on their feet, providing job training, housing assistance, and childcare support. Grace serves as CEO of the foundation while co-managing their business empire. Her story has become legendary in Enugu, proof that dignity, courage, and kindness can triumph over pride, jealousy, and social barriers. Chioma, now 6, is a bright, confident child who knows her story. She understands that sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as our darkest moments. The Golden Spoon still reserves table 7 every Friday evening, but not for Marcus's solitary meals. Instead, it's reserved for couples celebrating their own love stories, engagements, anniversaries, and new beginnings. A small plaque by the table reads, "Everyone deserves a second chance. True wealth lies in the connections we make and the love we share." Grace's journey from desperate cleaner to successful businesswoman and beloved wife proves that our lowest moments can become the foundation for our greatest triumphs. When she asked for leftovers that night, she received something far more valuable, a reminder that kindness exists, that people still care, and that love can bloom in the most unexpected places. Marcus learned that true wealth isn't measured in money but in the lives we touch and the love we give. By opening his heart to Grace's courage, he discovered a richness that no amount of money could buy. Their story reminds us all that dignity is never determined by circumstances, that courage comes in many forms, and that sometimes the people we least expect can change our lives forever. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to see more inspiring tales of hope and transformation. Share in the comments your takeaway from the story, because these stories matter, and they remind us of the good that still exists in our world. Don't forget to like this video and hit that notification bell for more uplifting content.